A barefoot girl in a torn white dress grabbed a stranger's arm at a gas station and whispered words that would expose a network of corruption reaching congressmen, federal judges, and law enforcement. She had walked 60 miles through the Arizona desert to escape a compound where women were sold to elderly men under the guise of spiritual marriage. What happened next brought 800 bikers from rival gangs together for the first time in history and destroyed careers of people no one suspected. The documents they uncovered revealed names that shocked the entire nation. The gas station existed in that space between nowhere and nothing, a forgotten outpost where the Arizona desert swallowed everything that wasn't bolted down. 2:47 in the morning. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects, casting pale circles onto cracked concrete that hadn't seen maintenance since the Clinton administration. Cole Brennan killed his engine and sat in the sudden silence. The Harley-Davidson Road King ticked beneath him as it cooled, each metallic click counting down seconds in the emptiness. He'd been riding for 6 hours straight, pushing west from Tucson toward Phoenix, running from something he couldn't name toward something he couldn't find. Sleep had become a stranger 5 years ago. The road was the only friend that never asked questions. 52 years old, president of the Phoenix chapter of the Hells Angels for 11 years running. His leather vest told stories in patches and pins, years of brotherhood, of blood spilled and bonds forged, of funerals where he'd stood stone-faced because showing weakness wasn't permitted. He swung his leg over the seat and felt his spine crack in 3 places. The gas pump was ancient, mechanical numbers rolling instead of digital displays, and he started filling the tank with the automatic motions of a man who'd done this 10,000 times before. That's when he heard it. Soft, rhythmic, wrong. Bare feet slapping against concrete, coming fast. Cole's hand moved toward his knife before his brain finished processing the sound. 20 years in the life had taught him that unexpected sounds at 3 in the morning rarely meant anything good. She came out of the darkness like a ghost, ripping free from a nightmare. A girl. No, a young woman, 18, maybe 19. White dress that had been beautiful once, now torn and stained with rust-colored marks that Cole's experienced eye immediately identified as dried blood. Bare feet, destroyed, blistered, bleeding, the kind of damage that came from days of walking across terrain that would shred leather boots. Blonde hair matted with dirt and sweat, eyes wild with terror, the look of a trapped animal that had finally, impossibly, found a gap in the fence. She covered the distance between the darkness and Cole in seconds, moving faster than her ruined feet should have allowed. Before he could speak, before he could react, her hand closed around his forearm with a grip that shocked him, fingernails digging into skin hard enough to draw blood, her entire body trembling so violently he could feel it through his leather jacket. "Please." The word came out destroyed, shredded by dehydration and desperation. "Please, they're coming. Don't let them take me back." Cole's knife hand relaxed. This wasn't a threat. This was something else entirely. "Easy." He kept his voice low, steady, the tone he'd use with a spooked horse or a brother coming down from a bad trip. "Easy. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Tell me what's happening." She looked over her shoulder at the darkness beyond the station's lights. Not casually, frantically, expecting pursuit, expecting capture. That glance told Cole more than any words could. "They sell us." Her voice cracked on the words like thin ice over deep water. "To old men. They call it marriage. They call it spiritual union. But they sell us, like property. Like cattle." Cold moved through Cole's chest, settling somewhere behind his sternum like a blade made of ice. "I'm 18, she continued, the words tumbling out now, a dam finally breaking. "My name is Emily, Emily Carter. I've been in that place for 3 years. They took everything from me, my name, my family, my future. And there are 36 other girls still inside. Women. All of them 18 or older. Some have been there for 7 years. The youngest one just turned 18 last month, and they're going to marry her to a man who's 63. He already has 4 wives. Cole's jaw tightened until his teeth ached. Where? The word came out harder than he intended. Where is this place? 60 miles northeast. They call it the Gates of Eden. Prophet Ezekiel Crane runs everything. He decides who gets married to who. He decides when we eat, when we sleep, who we talk to. He decides everything. Her grip on his arm tightened even further. I ran. 3 days ago. The night before they were going to marry me to Elder Jeremiah. He's 68 years old. I couldn't. Her voice broke. I couldn't let that happen, so I went over the fence and I started walking. No water, no food, no shoes. I just walked. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Cole looked at her feet again. 3 days across the Arizona desert in June. Without shoes. Without water. The fact that she was standing, the fact that she was alive, was nothing short of miraculous. Before we go any further, Cole said, I need you to understand who I am. You see this vest? He gestured to the patches. You know what this means? Emily nodded slowly. Hell's Angels. That's right. Most people see us coming. They cross the street. They lock their doors. They call the cops. He paused, studying her face. But you grabbed onto me like I was your last hope on earth. Why? Emily's laugh was bitter, broken, carrying the weight of 3 years of hell. Because I spent 3 years being told that men like you were demons, monsters, animals, and then I watched the godly men in that compound do things that would make actual demons sick. She met his eyes, and there was steel in her gaze now, forged in fires he couldn't imagine. I'll take my chances with honest sinners over lying saints any day. Something shifted in Cole's chest, a gear clicking into place, a door opening that had been sealed shut for 6 years. Remember this gas station. In 72 hours, 800 motorcycles will be parked on this ground. But before that moment, something will happen that will steal your breath. Okay, Emily, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get on the back of my bike. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, and then we're going to figure out how to help those other 36 women. He wanted to promise more, wanted to tell her everything would be fine. But Cole Brennan had learned years ago that empty promises were worse than silence. Emily stared at him. For a moment she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, slowly, the death grip on his arm relaxed. Not releasing, just softening. Like she was allowing herself, for the first time in 3 days, to believe she might actually survive. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? You don't know me. I could be lying. I could be crazy. I could be... Cole reached into the inside pocket of his vest and pulled out a photograph. The image was worn at the edges, creased from being held too many times. A young woman smiled out from it. Early 20s, dark hair, Cole's eyes staring back from a different face. Because 6 years ago someone should have helped her, Cole said, and no one did. Before you continue, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell right now. This story will shock you more than once, and you'll be glad you subscribed. Hit that like button if you believe justice still exists. Let's go. Emily looked at the photograph. Then at Cole. She didn't ask questions. Some sorrows didn't require explanation. She climbed onto the back of the Harley. Cole handed her his spare helmet, too big, but it would do. He started the engine, and the roar split the desert silence like a declaration of war. As they pulled away from the station, Emily's arms wrapped around his waist. Cole glanced in his mirror. The gas station receded into darkness, swallowed by the Arizona night. He didn't know it then, but he would return to that exact spot many times in the years to come. And every time, he would remember this moment, the moment when everything changed. The Desert Rose Inn sat 40 miles west of the gas station, a relic from the 1960s that had somehow survived into the new millennium through stubbornness and a complete indifference to modern standards. The neon sign flickered with 2 letters burned out, transforming Desert Rose Inn into Desert Row A Inn. The parking lot held a scattering of pickup trucks and one ancient Winnebago that looked like it had taken root. But it was safe. It was 40 miles from that gas station, which meant it was over 100 miles from the gates of Eden. And the woman who ran the night desk, a weathered grandmother named Rosa, who'd known Cole for 15 years, asked no questions when he walked in at 4 a.m. with a barefoot, bleeding girl in a torn white dress. "Room 12, Rosa said, sliding a key across the counter. "First aid kit under the bathroom sink. I'll bring food." "Thank you." Rosa looked at Emily with eyes that had seen too much to be shocked by anything. "You're safe now, Mija. Whatever happened, it's over." Emily started to cry. It was the first time since she'd grabbed Cole's arm that she allowed herself to break. Standing in the fluorescent-lit lobby of a rundown desert motel surrounded by strangers, she finally let the walls come down. Rosa came around the counter and wrapped her arms around the sobbing girl. She didn't speak. She just held her. Cole watched, and for a moment he saw Maggie in that embrace. Maggie, who had never found a Rosa, who had never encountered a stranger willing to help, who had walked into the desert alone and never come back. He turned away and pulled out his phone. The first call went to Danny Nail Soriano, vice president of the Phoenix chapter. Danny answered on the second ring, despite the hour. That was brotherhood. You answered when a brother called, no matter what. "Brother," Cole kept his voice low, "we have a situation." He explained, brief, factual. The girl, the compound, the 36 others still trapped inside. Danny was quiet for a long moment after Cole finished. "Church," he said finally. "Emergency church. I'll make the calls. Everyone who can ride will be at the Desert Rose by sunrise." "Thank you, brother." "Cole," Danny's voice carried weight now. "This is the one, isn't it? The one you've been waiting for since Maggie." Cole closed his eyes. The question cut deeper than any knife. "Yeah, this is the one. Then we're with you. All of us, whatever it takes." The line went dead. Cole stood in the motel hallway, phone in hand, and allowed himself one moment of something that felt almost like hope. Then he walked to room 12 to check on Emily. She was in the bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub with her destroyed feet submerged in water that had already turned pink. Rosa had brought bandages, antiseptic, painkillers. Emily was working on her wounds with steady hands that belied the tears still streaming down her face. "I can give you privacy," Cole said from the doorway. "No," Emily didn't look up. "I've been alone for 3 years. I don't want to be alone right now." So he stayed. He sat on the closed toilet lid with his back mostly turned, giving her what dignity the small space allowed, and listened as she finally told her full story. "I was 19 when they found me." Her voice was steadier now, though it still trembled on certain words. "I just dropped out of college. My parents had just gotten divorced, and I didn't know which one to live with, so I chose neither. I was couch surfing, working at a coffee shop, feeling like my whole life was falling apart." She paused. Water dripped, silence stretched. "There was this customer who came in every day. Her name was Sarah, maybe 10 years older than me. She always seemed so peaceful, so happy, like she'd figured out something the rest of us hadn't." Emily's laugh was bitter. That was her job: find lost girls, be their friend, earn their trust, and then when they're ready, invite them to this amazing place in the desert where everyone loves each other and no one is ever alone. Cole made a vow at his sister's grave. The words he spoke that night would change the fate of 37 strangers, but the price he would pay for that vow, you'll discover later. Within 3 months, I was living at the compound. Within 6 months, I'd stopped using my name. They gave me a number instead. She held up her wrist. In the harsh bathroom light, Cole could see it clearly, a thin silver bracelet with a number engraved on its surface. 47. This was what they put on me the day I arrived, my number. From that moment on, I wasn't Emily anymore. I was 47. When they called for me, they used the number. When they talked about me, they used the number. After a while, some of the girls stopped remembering their real names entirely. Cole felt his hands clench into fists at his sides. "Prophet Crane controls everything," Emily continued. "Who eats what, who sleeps where, who talks to who, and most importantly, who marries who." The word came out like poison. When a girl turns 18 in the compound, or when a new girl arrives who's already 18, she goes on the list. The marriage list. The elders, men in their 50s, 60s, some even older, they put in requests. And Crane decides who gets who. Like shopping. Like cattle at an auction. "That's illegal," Cole said. "Forced marriage, even between adults." "Prove it." Emily's response was instant, sharp. Every girl signs consent forms. Every girl stands in front of witnesses and says, "I do." The fact that we've been manipulated, isolated, threatened, and broken until saying no feels impossible, none of that shows up on paperwork. She pulled her feet from the water and began drying them with a towel. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the damage was severe. She'd need proper medical attention soon. "I got lucky at first," she said. "The elder who requested me died a few months after I arrived. Then another one got expelled for stealing from the compound. I kept going back on the list, kept dodging. But you can only dodge for so long." "Exactly." Emily's voice dropped. 3 months ago, Elder Jeremiah put in his request, 68 years old, 3 wives already. The youngest is 20, and she told me once she cries herself to sleep every night. Her hands started shaking. The wedding was supposed to be 3 days ago. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I was lying in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, and I realized this was it. This was my life now. 4th wife to a man older than my grandfather, spending the rest of my existence cooking, cleaning, and she couldn't finish. So I ran. There's a spot on the eastern fence where the wire's loose, 60 miles to the nearest town through open desert. No water, no shade, no chance. She looked at her bandaged feet. But I made it. I don't know how. I should have died out there, multiple times. But every time I wanted to give up, I thought about the others. About Lily and Destiny and Hannah, about the 36 women still trapped in that hell. Her eyes met Cole's, blazing with something that went beyond survival. "I couldn't save them from inside. Maybe I can save them from outside." "What do you think? Who's the real criminal here? The bikers that society considers dangerous, or the respectable people hiding behind the law? Write in the comments, bikers are heroes or the system is completely rotten." Cole stood slowly. "This Prophet Crane," he said. "Tell me about him." "Ezekiel Crane. Started the Gates of Eden in 2003. Before that," Emily's lip curled. "Used car salesman in Phoenix. Can you believe that? A used car salesman who decided one day that God had chosen him to lead the faithful. And people believed him? People will believe anything if you say it with enough confidence. And Crane has confidence in spades. Charisma, too. When he talks, you want to believe him. That's what makes him so dangerous." Emily reached for a clean bandage. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I haven't told you yet." Cole waited. "Crane has protection. Local protection. I don't know the details, but I've seen things. Cars with government plates visiting the compound. Crane making phone calls, and suddenly, inspectors who were asking questions stop asking. 3 girls tried to escape before me. All 3 were caught, not by compound security, by sheriff's deputies. Deputies who drove them right back to the gates and handed them over like lost property." Ice formed in Cole's gut. "The sheriff. Do you know his name?" "Hannity. Sheriff Joseph Hannity. He's been to the compound for dinner. I've served him food." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. This wasn't just a cult with brainwashed followers. This was an operation with institutional protection, a machine that had been grinding up women for 16 years, the bracelet with number 47. Emily hadn't taken it off once in 3 years. Why will become clear at the very end of this story, and trust me, you're not ready for it. Taking down something like that wouldn't be as simple as kicking in a door. Cole's phone buzzed, a text from Danny. 43 confirmed en route, more calls coming in. What did you find, brother? Or he typed back, something bigger than we thought. See you at sunrise. Outside the bathroom window, the first hints of dawn were painting the eastern sky. In a few hours, the desert would transform from cool darkness to blazing heat. And with the sunrise, everything would begin. Margaret Maggie Brennan had been 22 years old when she disappeared, 22 with her whole life ahead of her, dreams of becoming a veterinarian, a laugh that could fill a room, Cole's baby sister by 12 years, the accident their parents had called a blessing. Cole had practically raised her. When their father drank himself toward an early grave and their mother worked double shifts just to keep the lights on, it was Cole who walked Maggie to school, Cole who helped with homework, Cole who scared off the boys who didn't treat her right and approved the ones who did. She was supposed to be the one who made it out, the one who went to college, the one who proved the Brennan name could mean something more than motorcycle clubs and blue-collar struggle. And she almost did. The cult found her online. That's how they operated now, not with pamphlets on street corners, but with social media accounts and YouTube channels and websites promising community and spiritual awakening, and a family that truly understands you. Maggie had just survived a brutal breakup. She was lonely, vulnerable, searching for meaning in a world that suddenly seemed empty. The recruiters had algorithms for finding people like her. First, it was online discussions, then a weekend retreat, then a month-long spiritual immersion program. Then, one day, Cole called her phone and a stranger answered. Margaret has chosen to devote herself to a higher path. She asks that you respect her journey and refrain from contact. The line went dead. Cole did everything in his power. Police told him Maggie was an adult making adult choices. FBI said there was no evidence of criminal activity. The private investigator he hired got run off the road 5 miles from the compound by unmarked trucks. He tried going himself, rode his Harley all the way to the New Mexico desert, right up to the gates of the place that had swallowed his sister. Armed guards with proper permits and polite smiles told him to leave. When he refused, they called the cops. Your sister is an adult, the officer had said. There's nothing illegal about religion, sir. Now please leave before I have to cuff you. 8 months later, Maggie was dead. They found her body in the desert, 5 miles from the compound. Exposure, dehydration. The coroner said she'd been wandering for at least 2 days. No one could explain how a healthy 22-year-old ended up wandering alone without water, shoes, or identification. No one could explain why the compound claimed no knowledge of her departure. No one could explain the bruises on her wrists and ankles that the coroner noted but didn't include in the final report. Case closed in 6 weeks. Accidental death. Cole stood at Maggie's grave on a gray November morning and made a promise. Never again, he whispered to the headstone. Not one girl. He meant it with every fiber of his being, but meaning something and doing something were different things. The system wasn't built to help people like Maggie. It was built to protect institutions, to respect religious freedom, to look the other way when powerful people did terrible things behind closed doors. For 6 years, Cole tried working within that system, testified before legislatures, lobbied for laws, donated to organizations helping cult survivors. Nothing changed. The compounds kept operating, the recruiters kept recruiting, the girls kept disappearing. And Cole kept waking at 2 in the morning, staring at ceilings, wondering if somewhere another sister was crying for a brother who couldn't save her. Now, in a rundown motel bathroom, listening to Emily Carter's story, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Emily was not Maggie. He couldn't save his sister. That wound would never heal. But Emily was alive. 36 other women were alive. And this time, Cole Brennan wasn't going to wait for permission from a system that had already proven it didn't care. The water in the tub had gone cold. Emily had finished bandaging her feet as best she could, and now she sat on the edge of the bed in room 12, wrapped in a blanket Rosa had brought, eating soup with the careful deliberation of someone who hadn't had real food in 3 days. Cole sat across from her, phone buzzing constantly with incoming messages. The network was activating. Brothers from across Arizona, across the Southwest, were answering the call. The compound has cameras, Emily said between spoonfuls. Motion sensors on most of the fence. Armed guards, maybe 15 or 20. They patrol in shifts. How did you get past them? The eastern section, about 100 yards where there's nothing but barbed wire. Crane's been meaning to upgrade it for years. He never did. Cole filed the information away. Eastern fence, weak point, possible entry. What about the women inside? Will they want to leave? Emily's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Some of them don't know they want to leave. That's how it works. You get isolated for so long, told the outside world is evil for so long, that you start to believe it. You start to think this is normal. This is family. This is love. Her voice hardened. But if you give them a real choice, a real option, most of them will take it. I know they will. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Cole's hand went to his knife. Emily's eyes went wide, the wild terror from the gas station returning in an instant. It's Rosa, a voice called through the door. I brought more food. Cole relaxed, crossed to the door, opened it. Rosa stood in the hallway with a tray, sandwiches, juice, coffee. Behind her, the first rays of sunlight were streaming through the motel's grimy windows, and behind the sunlight, Cole could hear something else. Engines, distant but growing, the unmistakable rumble of Harley-Davidsons, multiple, many. "Your friends are arriving," Rosa said, nodding toward the parking lot. "Quite a few of them." Cole stepped outside. The Desert Rose Inn's parking lot was transforming. What had been empty asphalt now held a growing forest of chrome and leather, motorcycles pulling in from every direction, men and women in cuts and denim dismounting, stretching road-weary muscles, looking around for their president. Danny was the first to reach him, pulling Cole into a bear hug that cracked vertebrae. 67 confirmed, Danny said. Another 40 still en route, should have over 100 by noon. Cole looked at the assembling army. Brothers he'd known for decades, prospects he'd only met once, all of them here because they'd heard there were women in danger and someone needed to do something about it. "This is real," Emily said from behind him. She'd emerged from the room, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the sea of motorcycles with an expression of pure disbelief. "This is actually happening." Among the 143 bikers who gathered that morning, there was one person nobody expected to see. His appearance would change everything, but more on that later. "This is what we do," Cole told her. "When someone needs help, we show up. No questions, no conditions, we just show up." "But you don't even know me. You don't know if I'm telling the truth." We know enough." Danny stepped forward, studying Emily with eyes that had seen 1,000 hard cases. "We know you walked 60 miles through the desert to escape something terrible. We know there are other women trapped in the same place. That's enough." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them away angrily. "I didn't think anyone would come," she whispered. "They told us no one was looking. No one cared. The outside world had moved on." "They lied to you," Cole said. "That's what people like them do. They isolate you, then tell you no help exists. Oldest trick in the book." He put a hand on her shoulder. "But we're here now. And we're not going anywhere until every single woman walks out of that compound free." The meeting happened at 8 o'clock, behind the motel, away from prying eyes. 143 bikers stood in a rough circle around Cole and Emily. They'd come from Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, and beyond. Presidents and prospects, veterans and newcomers, united by a call that had gone out in the pre-dawn hours. Emily told her story again, this time to an audience that listened in stone-faced silence, their expressions giving away nothing but their clenched fists and tightened jaws revealing everything. When she finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Then, Hank Ironside Morrison, Sergeant-at-Arms for Phoenix, stepped forward. "How do we know she's telling the truth?" Emily's head snapped toward him. For a moment, Cole thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed, bitter and broken. "You want proof?" She held up her wrist, showing the bracelet. "Every girl in that compound has one of these. Check my feet, 60 miles of desert. Check Crane's history. He ran a compound in Utah that got shut down in 2001 after 3 women escaped. He learned from his mistakes, got smarter, got protection." She stepped toward Hank, chin lifted. "I didn't come for your belief. I came for your help. If you don't want to give it, I'll find someone else. But while you're asking questions, 36 women are waking up in that compound, and some of them are being told today who they're going to marry." The silence stretched. Hank nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I needed to see if you'd fold under pressure." He looked at Cole. "She's solid. I'm in." One by one, the others voiced agreement. In. A chorus building until every voice had spoken. 143 souls, united. "All right," Cole said. "Here's what we know. The compound is 62 miles northeast. 37 women inside, all adults. Armed guards, maybe 15 to 20. Cameras and sensors on most of the perimeter, but weak spot on the eastern fence." He paused. "What we don't know, how deep the corruption goes. Emily says Sheriff Hannity is in Crane's pocket. Could be others. We can't trust local law enforcement, can't assume anyone official's on our side." "So what do?" Someone called out. "We gather intelligence. We build our case. We create so much public attention that whoever's protecting Crane can't keep the lid on." Cole's voice hardened. "And then, when we move with everything we've got." Danny stepped forward. "I've already put out feelers. Got chapters from California to Texas saying they want in. By tomorrow we could have 300 bikes, maybe more. The number hung in the air. Before Cole could respond, a new sound cut through the morning. Sirens. Everyone turned. Coming from the east, a convoy of sheriff's vehicles, 4 cruisers, lights flashing, moving fast. "Nobody moves," Cole said. "Don't give them an excuse." The cruisers pulled into the parking lot, kicking up dust. Deputies emerged with hands on weapons, forming a line facing the assembled bikers. The lead vehicle's door opened. Sheriff Joseph Hannity stepped out, mid-50s, heavy-set, face like weathered sandstone, badge gleaming, eyes sweeping the crowd with undisguised contempt. "Well, well," his voice carried across the lot. "Some kind of biker convention?" Cole stepped forward, positioning himself between Hannity and Emily. "Sheriff, just a meeting with friends. No laws being broken." Hannity's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A meeting, with 150 motorcycles, and the owner hasn't complained about the noise? We have permission. We're on private property." Hannity's gaze shifted. Found Emily. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, just for a second, before his expression locked back into professional neutrality. But Cole saw it. That flash of recognition. Hannity knew exactly who Emily was. "Ma'am." The sheriff's tone shifted to something that might have sounded friendly to anyone who didn't know better. "You look like you've had a rough time. Why don't you come with me? Get some proper medical attention?" Emily pressed against Cole's side. "I'm safe right here." "Now, ma'am, I don't think you understand. These people," he gestured at the bikers, "they're not the kind of folk you want to associate with. Criminal organization, dangerous individuals. I trust them more than I trust you." Hannity's mask slipped. Something ugly flickered across his face. "Listen here, girl." "Her name," Cole interrupted, "is Emily Carter. She's an adult, not under arrest, and she's told you she wants to stay. Unless you have a warrant or probable cause, I think we're done. If it infuriates you that the sheriff protects criminals instead of victims, right now, corrupt cops are America's shame. Let that comment become your voice." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hannity smiled. Cold, empty. "All right then, friendly advice, Mr. Brennan, Cole Brennan. Mr. Brennan, this county has laws. They apply to everyone, even motorcycle clubs with delusions of grandeur. Step out of line, and I'll personally ensure every one of you spends the next year in a cell." Cole held the sheriff's gaze. Crystal clear. Hannity turned to leave, then paused. Sheriff Hannity uttered a phrase that would later be shown in court before the entire nation. He didn't yet know he was being recorded. That recording would destroy his career. "One more thing. If I were you, I'd tell that girl to think carefully about where she belongs. Some people aren't meant for the outside world. Some people are happier where they came from." He got in his car, and the convoy pulled away. The bikers watched until the sirens faded. "We've got a problem," Danny said. "Yeah," Cole agreed, "we do." But somewhere in the crowd, a prospect named Tommy Chen was looking at his phone, at the video he'd just recorded, at Sheriff Hannity's face, captured in perfect clarity, saying words that would one day play on every news network in America. The first piece of evidence was already secured, and the war was just beginning. The black SUVs appeared at 2:17 in the afternoon. 6 of them. Identical. Tinted windows so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. They rolled into the Desert Rose parking lot in perfect formation, engines purring with the quiet confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Cole saw them first from the motel's second-floor walkway, where he'd been coordinating logistics with Danny. His hand went to his phone immediately, sending a group text. "Company, everyone outside, now." Within 60 seconds, the parking lot transformed. 143 bikers emerged from motel rooms, from the diner across the street, from clusters around their motorcycles. They formed a wall of leather and denim, faces hard, bodies positioned to protect the single figure standing behind them. Emily Carter, wrapped in a borrowed jacket that was 3 sizes too big, watched the SUVs with eyes that had gone dead. "They found me," she whispered. "I knew they would. They always find us." "Not this time," Cole said. He stepped forward, positioning himself at the front of the biker wall. This time is different. The SUV doors opened simultaneously. 12 men emerged. They wore matching khaki pants and white button-down shirts, the uniform of the Gates of Eden security force. Clean-cut, well-fed. The kind of men who smiled while they destroyed lives. The leader was older than the others, mid-40s with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes that held the flat calm of a reptile. He walked toward the biker line with the unhurried pace of someone who had never encountered resistance he couldn't crush. "My name is Silas Morrow," he announced. "I'm here on behalf of the Gates of Eden community to retrieve a young woman who left our care without authorization." "Nobody here left without authorization," Cole replied. "Everyone here is exactly where they want to be." Morrow's smile didn't waver. "Emily Carter's confused, mentally unstable. She requires the spiritual guidance that only our community can provide. We're here to help her." Funny definition of help. Danny stepped up beside Cole. Usually, help doesn't require 6 SUVs and a dozen guards. "We anticipated resistance." Morrow's gaze swept across the assembled bikers with something approaching amusement. "Emily has clearly fallen in with troubled individuals. We simply want to speak with her, remind her of the family that loves her." "She can speak for herself," Cole said. "Emily?" The crowd parted slightly, allowing Emily to step forward. She was shaking. Cole could see it from 10 feet away, but her voice came out steady. "I'm not going back, Silas." Number 47. Morrow's use of her compound designation was deliberate, pointed. "You're confused. The desert affected your mind. Come home and all will be forgiven. Prophet Crane has already prepared your quarters. Elder Jeremiah has agreed to delay the ceremony until you've recovered." "I'm not confused. And my name is Emily." "Your name is what the prophet says it is." For the first time, an edge crept into Morrow's voice. "You belong to the community. You signed contracts. You made vows. You can't simply walk away from sacred obligations." Emily's chin lifted. "Watch me." Morrow studied her for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted to Cole. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Brennan, you don't understand what you're interfering with. The Gates of Eden has friends, powerful friends, people who can make life very difficult for an outlaw motorcycle club with a long history of legal troubles." "Is that a threat?" "It's a statement of fact." Morrow's smile returned, but it had transformed into something colder. "Emily will return to us. They always do, one way or another." He had no idea that those words, "they always do," would be thrown back in his face by 800 voices. That moment was coming, and it would break him. "I think we're done here," Cole said. "We're done when I say we're done." "No." Cole stepped forward, closing the distance between them until they were almost chest to chest. "You're done. You're going to get back in those pretty SUVs, and you're going to drive away, and you're going to tell your prophet that Emily Carter isn't coming back. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." For a heartbeat, something flickered in Morrow's eyes, something that looked almost like uncertainty. Then it was gone. "We'll see each other again, Mr. Brennan." He turned, gesturing to his men. "Sooner than you think." The security team retreated to their vehicles. Doors slammed, engines started. The convoy pulled away, leaving nothing but dust and the lingering smell of exhaust. "That's not the last of them," Danny said. "No," Cole agreed. "It's not." Emily was trembling harder now, the adrenaline of the confrontation giving way to the crash that always followed. Cole put a hand on her shoulder, feeling the fear radiating through her borrowed jacket. "You did good," he said. "You stood up to them." "I'm still terrified." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you act anyway." Emily looked up at him with eyes that were slowly regaining their fire. "What happens now?" Before Cole could answer, his phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "I've been waiting 5 years for someone to stand up to Crane. We should talk. Walsh, FBI." Cole stared at the message for a long moment. Then he looked at Emily. "Now," he said, "things get interesting." The next 3 hours were chaos. Sheriff Hannity returned with reinforcements, 8 deputies this time, plus 2 state police cruisers that had mysteriously appeared despite no one requesting them. He demanded that the unlawful assembly disperse immediately, citing obscure public safety ordinances that even his own deputies looked confused by. Cole refused. "We're on private property with the owner's permission," he said for the 5th time. "There's no unlawful assembly. There's no public safety threat. There's just a group of law-abiding citizens exercising their right to free association." "Law-abiding?" Hannity's laugh was ugly. "Right. I've got files on half these people thick enough to choke a horse. Files aren't convictions, Sheriff. Last I checked, this was still America." The standoff lasted 2 hours. Hannity threatened mass arrests. Cole pointed out that arresting 143 people for standing in a parking lot would make for interesting news coverage. Hannity's face went purple, but eventually he backed down. "This isn't over," he said as he climbed into his cruiser. "No," Cole agreed, "it's not." But something had shifted during those 2 hours. The bikers, who had started the day as individuals answering a call, had become something else, a unit, a force. They'd stood shoulder to shoulder against authority, and they'd won. The bond that formed in that parking lot would prove unbreakable. As the last police cruiser disappeared down the highway, Cole's phone buzzed again. The unknown number, Walsh, FBI. "I can be there in an hour. Meet me at the diner across the street. Come alone." Cole showed the message to Danny. "Could be a setup," Danny said. "Could be. But if there's really a Fed who's been trying to take down Crane for 5 years, we need to know. I'll have eyes on you the whole time. Anything goes wrong, we're through that door in seconds." Cole nodded. 1 hour. The diner was called Rosita's, and it had probably been serving the same menu since Eisenhower was president. Cracked vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools, and a jukebox in the corner that only played songs from the 1950s. Cole arrived first, taking a booth in the back with a clear view of both exits. Old habit, survival instinct. The woman who walked in exactly 1 hour later wasn't what he expected. Mid-30s, tall and lean, with short dark hair and eyes that scanned the room with professional precision before landing on Cole. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a blazer, comfortable shoes, but everything about her screamed law enforcement. She slid into the booth across from him without asking permission. "Special Agent Patricia Walsh, FBI." She didn't offer to shake hands. "I'm going to talk fast because we don't have much time, and you're going to listen because what I have to say is the only chance those women have." Cole said nothing, just waited. 5 years ago, I opened an investigation into the Gates of Eden compound based on testimony from a former member named Sarah Chen. She'd escaped the year before and was willing to testify about everything: the forced marriages, the psychological manipulation, the financial crimes. It was a solid case. Should have been a slam dunk. Walsh's jaw tightened. The case got killed. Witnesses recanted. Evidence went missing. Warrants got denied by judges who had no business denying them. Someone high up was protecting Crane, and they had enough juice to make a federal investigation disappear. "So why are you here now?" "Because this morning I got a call from a contact inside the sheriff's department, someone who isn't on Crane's payroll. They told me about the girl who escaped, about the bikers gathering at a motel, about Hannity personally driving out to shut you down." She leaned forward. "For 5 years, I've been fighting this battle alone, watching victims get handed back to their captors while my superiors told me to move on. And then I wake up today and find out 150 people are willing to stand against the same monster I've been chasing." Agent Walsh kept one folder for 5 years. She called it the ghost case. What was inside would send not only the cult leader to prison, but people you would never expect. "I don't care about your patches," she continued. "I don't care about whatever history exists between the Bureau and your club. Right now, the only thing I care about is getting those women out and putting Ezekiel Crane in a cell where he belongs." She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn folder. "This is everything I've gathered that hasn't been buried yet. Financial records, testimony transcripts, communication logs. It's not enough for an arrest warrant on its own, but combined with what your girl can provide—" "Her name is Emily." Walsh paused. Something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. "Combined with what Emily can provide, we might have enough to force action, real action, the kind that can't be squashed from above." Cole looked at the folder, at the woman across from him, at the choice that lay before him. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't. Not automatically. Trust is earned, not given." Walsh met his eyes without flinching. But I can tell you this. I've spent 5 years of my career trying to bring down a man who sells women like livestock. I've lost promotions, lost relationships, almost lost my badge. If I was on Crane's side, I'd have a much easier life. She slid the folder across the table. Verify everything. Check my credentials. Check my story. Talk to Sarah Chen if you can find her. She's in witness protection, but there are ways. Do your due diligence. And if everything checks out, then we work together. Your people provide the pressure, the public attention, the force that makes this impossible to ignore. My people provide the legal framework, the warrants, the prosecution that puts Crane away for good. Cole opened the folder. Financial records, photographs, names. Some of those names he recognized. A state senator, a judge, a deputy director at the bureau. Jesus, he breathed. Now you understand why this has been so hard to crack. Walsh's voice was grim. Crane's been building his network for 16 years. He's got hooks in places that would make your head spin. And you think we can still take him down? I think if we don't do it now, with this moment of public attention, we never will. She stood. I'll be at the motel in 3 hours. Bring your leadership. Bring Emily. And bring whatever evidence you've gathered. She walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. That video your prospect took of Sheriff Hannity? The one where he tells Emily she belongs where she came from? Cole's eyebrows rose. How do you know about that? I'm FBI, Mr. Brennan. Knowing things is my job. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Upload it, everywhere, tonight, and then stand back and watch the world burn. 800 bikers dropped everything and rode to save women they'd never met. If you believe such people are real heroes, right? Brotherhood is stronger than blood. Let's show how many of us there are. The video went viral at 9:47 p.m. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By dawn, it was being discussed on every major news network in the country. The footage was damning. Sheriff Joseph Hannity, in full uniform with his badge gleaming, telling a trafficking victim that some people aren't meant for the outside world and that she might be happier where she came from. CNN led with it. Fox picked it up minutes later. Local affiliates across Arizona ran it on loop with increasingly outraged commentary from legal experts and victims' advocates. A hashtag emerged, #FreeTheSisters. Within 12 hours, it was trending worldwide, and with every share, every retweet, every outraged citizen demanding answers, something else was happening, something that wouldn't become apparent until later. Phones were ringing across the country, in clubhouses and garages, in living rooms and bars. Members of motorcycle clubs from coast to coast were watching the news, seeing the video, hearing about the women trapped in a desert compound. And they were making a decision. By the time the sun rose on the second day, the number of bikes confirmed to arrive had tripled, then quadrupled. The Desert Rose parking lot was no longer sufficient. Bikers were spilling onto the highway shoulders, into adjacent lots, onto any flat surface that could hold a motorcycle. Cole stood on the motel roof at 5 in the morning, watching the endless stream of headlights approaching from every direction. Latest count, Danny said, climbing up beside him. 812 confirmed, another 60 to 70 en route. 800. Cole shook his head slowly. I've been in this life for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. That's because there's never been anything like this. Danny handed him a cup of coffee. It's not just us anymore, brother. Bandidos called. They want in. So did the Mongols, even the desert riders from Elko, and those guys don't talk to anyone. Clubs that have been at war for generations, putting aside their beefs to help women they've never met. Danny's voice was thick with something Cole rarely heard from him. Emotion. Whatever happens next, this is already historic. 800 bikers. That's a lot. But WHO exactly came as part of that army will shock you more than the number itself. Wait, and you'll understand. Below them, the parking lot was a sea of chrome and leather, men and women from every corner of America, wearing patches that normally meant conflict, standing shoulder to shoulder in common cause. There's someone you need to see, Danny said, down by the east side of the lot. He's been waiting since 3 a.m., Cole frowned. Who? Better if you see for yourself. They descended from the roof and made their way through the crowd. Bikers parted before Cole, nodding respectfully, some reaching out to clasp his shoulder or shake his hand. At the eastern edge of the gathering, standing beside a weathered Harley that had seen better decades, was a man Cole hadn't seen in over 10 years. Gabriel "Ghost" Fernandez, president of the Texas chapter of the Bandidos. A man who had once sworn, in front of witnesses, that he would kill Cole Brennan if their paths ever crossed again. That had been after the incident in El Paso, the one that had left Ghost's younger brother in a wheelchair and Cole's best friend in the ground. Brennan. Ghost's voice was gravel scraped over concrete. Fernandez. The two men stared at each other. The crowd around them had gone silent, sensing the history, the tension, the possibility of violence. "My daughter's 22, Ghost said finally. "Same age as the women in that compound. When I heard what Crane does to girls her age," he trailed off, jaw working. "You came to help." "I came because some things are bigger than old beefs." Ghost extended his hand. "What happened in El Paso, that's between us, always will be. But right now, today, those women need everyone who's willing to fight for them." Cole looked at the offered hand, at the man he'd hated for a decade, at the choice that lay before him. He took it. "Welcome to the operation," Cole said. Around them, the gathered bikers exhaled. The moment passed. History had been made. "All right," Ghost said. "What's the plan?" The War Council convened at noon. 30 representatives from different clubs crowded into the Desert Rose's largest room. Presidents, vice presidents, sergeants-at-arms. Agent Walsh stood in the corner with 2 other FBI agents she'd brought in from Phoenix. Emily sat near the door, her silver bracelet glinting under the fluorescent lights. Cole stood at the head of the room, a map of the compound spread across the table before him. "Here's what we know," he began. "The Gates of Eden is 62 miles northeast, approximately 37 adult women inside, all being held against their will or under psychological coercion. Armed guards, estimate 15 to 20, cameras and motion sensors on most of the perimeter, with one weak point on the eastern fence," he pointed to the map. "Sheriff Hannity is compromised. We have video evidence of him warning Emily to return to the compound. Agent Walsh has documentation suggesting he's been receiving payments from Crane for at least 5 years. Walsh stepped forward. "The federal angle is solid. Based on the financial records we've recovered, we have grounds for warrants on human trafficking, wire fraud, and conspiracy charges. My team is preparing the paperwork now." "When can we move?" someone asked. 24 hours, maybe less if we can get a judge who isn't in Crane's pocket." "That's a big if," Ghost observed. "How many judges has Crane bought?" "At least 3 in this district, but I've found one, Judge Sarah Okonkwo in Phoenix, who has no connections to Crane's network. She's reviewing our evidence as we speak." "And if she approves the warrants?" "Then we hit the compound with federal agents and enough bikers to ensure no one escapes. We free the women, arrest Crane and his leadership, and build cases against everyone in his network." Cole looked around the room. "But here's the thing. The feds can't do this alone. They don't have the numbers to surround that compound and prevent anyone from running. That's where we come in." Danny stepped forward. "Current count is 847 motorcycles. We've got brothers from 12 states ready to ride. The plan is simple. We form a perimeter around the compound before the feds move in. No one gets out. No evidence gets destroyed. No hostages get taken." "Rules of engagement?" Ghost asked. "We're not there to fight. We're there to contain." Cole's voice was firm. "If Crane's people shoot first, we defend ourselves. But we don't start anything. This has to be legal, documented, airtight. If we give them any excuse to paint us as the aggressors, we lose everything." The room was quiet for a moment. Then a voice spoke from the doorway. "I want to go." Everyone turned. Emily stood there, her bandaged feet visible beneath borrowed jeans, her silver bracelet catching the light. "Those women know me," she said. "When they see strangers, even friendly ones, they'll be terrified. They've been told for years that the outside world is dangerous. But if they see me," she swallowed hard, "if they see number 47 walking free, telling them it's safe, they'll believe it." "It's dangerous," Cole said. "More dangerous than walking 60 miles through the desert?" Emily's chin lifted. I didn't survive that just to hide in a motel room while everyone else does the hard work. Those are my sisters in there, my family, the only family I had for 3 years. I'm going." Cole studied her for a long moment. The fear was still there, buried beneath the surface. But so was something else, something that looked like steel. "All right," he said, "you ride with me." Emily nodded once sharply. "Then let's finish this." The night before the operation, Cole couldn't sleep. He found himself on the roof of the motel again, staring at the stars scattered across the Arizona sky. The photograph of Maggie was in his hand, worn almost to translucence now, the colors fading, the edges soft from thousands of touches. 6 years since he'd stood at her grave and made a promise. 6 years of fighting a system that didn't want to be fought, of watching predators escape justice, of waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if he was doing any good at all. Tomorrow, he would find out if any of it mattered. "You're thinking about her." Cole turned. Emily stood at the roof access door, wrapped in a blanket against the desert cold. "You should be sleeping," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be hard." Couldn't sleep either. She walked over and sat down beside him, her bandaged feet dangling over the edge. "I keep thinking about what might go wrong. What if Crane has more guards than we know? What if the women don't want to leave? What if you've walked 60 miles through the desert for nothing?" Emily laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that." That night on the motel roof, Cole made a decision. One decision that in 48 hours would attract the attention of the FBI, CNN, and the United States Congress. Cole looked at the photograph in his hand, then at Emily, at the bracelet on her wrist, at the woman who had survived the unsurvivable. "I'm going to tell you something," he said. "Something I've never told anyone outside the club." Emily waited. "After Maggie died, I wanted to burn everything down, the compound that took her, the system that failed her, everything." His voice roughened. "I planned it out, explosives, guns, a one-way trip into New Mexico to take as many of them with me as I could." "What stopped you?" "Danny. He found me loading my bike the night before I was going to do it, talked me down. Told me that dying wasn't justice. It was just another way of letting them win." Cole's jaw tightened. He was right. But for 6 years, I've wondered if maybe I should have done it anyway. Maybe burning it all down was the only answer. He turned to face Emily. "And then I met you. And I realized there's another way. Not burning. Building. Taking all this rage and turning it into something that actually helps people instead of just destroying enemies." Emily's eyes were shimmering in the starlight. "Tomorrow," Cole continued, "we're going to ride into that compound with 800 people at our backs. We're going to free those women. And we're going to prove that you don't need to burn everything down to make a difference. Sometimes you just need enough good people standing together. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried. At least we showed up." He tucked the photograph back into his vest. "That's more than most people ever do." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing me, for fighting for us, for showing me that there are still good people in this world." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when those women are free." "I'll thank you now, and I'll thank you then." She squeezed his hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad I grabbed your arm at that gas station." Cole felt something crack in his chest, something that had been frozen for 6 years. "Me too," he said. They sat in silence as the stars wheeled overhead, two survivors of different horrors, connected by a shared hope. Tomorrow would bring chaos, tomorrow would bring danger, tomorrow might bring failure. But tonight, there was peace, and that was enough. At 4 a.m., Cole's phone buzzed, a text from Agent Walsh. "Warrants approved. We move at dawn. Coordinate with your people." He stared at the message for a long moment. Then he began making calls. Within an hour, the Desert Rose parking lot was chaos in the best possible way. 847 bikers preparing for war, engines being checked, routes being confirmed, final assignments being distributed. Cole stood at the center of it all, feeling the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on him. "Everyone knows their positions?" he asked Danny. "Everyone knows. West perimeter, east perimeter, north and south approaches. No gaps, no escape routes." "And the feds?" "Walsh's team is staging 5 miles out. They'll move in once we're in position." Cole nodded, looked around at the army he'd assembled. Hell's Angels, Bandidos, Mongols, Desert Riders, Independents, men and women who had been enemies for generations, standing together for a cause that transcended old grudges. He climbed onto a truck bed to address them all. "Listen up," his voice carried across the crowd. "In 30 minutes, we ride, 62 miles northeast. We're going to surround that compound, and we're going to make sure nobody gets out until every last woman is free." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "I know some of you came ready for blood. I understand that. What Crane does to those women, it deserves blood. But that's not what this is about. This is about liberation, about justice, about proving that when regular people stand together, evil doesn't stand a chance." He paused. "When we roll up to those gates, they're going to see something they've never seen before. 800 people who decided that someone else's problem was their problem too. 800 people who refused to look away. 800 people who showed up when it mattered." His voice rose. "They told those women that nobody was coming, that nobody cared, that the outside world had forgotten them. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show them what happens when you mess with the wrong people." "Today, we ride." 847 voices answered as one. "We ride." The sound rolled across the desert like thunder, like a promise, like the war cry of an army that had finally found a battle worth fighting. Cole climbed down from the truck. Emily was waiting for him, wearing borrowed riding gear that didn't quite fit, her silver bracelet visible at her wrist. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded once. "Let's bring them home." Cole mounted his Harley. Emily climbed on behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist. Around them, 846 other engines roared to life, and as the sun broke over the eastern horizon, painting the desert gold, the largest convoy in Arizona history began to move. The gates of Eden had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. The convoy stretched for 4 miles across the Arizona desert. From above, it would have looked like a metal serpent slithering toward prey, chrome scales glinting in the morning sun, exhaust fumes rising like breath, 847 engines creating a rumble that could be felt through the earth itself. News helicopters had picked them up 30 miles out. CNN, Fox, local affiliates, all of them tracking the unprecedented procession as it moved relentlessly northeast. Social media exploded with real-time updates. #free. The Sisters was trending in 63 countries. Millions of people around the world were watching, waiting, holding their breath. Cole rode at the front, Emily's arms locked around his waist. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the motel. He could feel her tension, the way her grip tightened every few minutes, the slight tremor that ran through her body whenever the compound drew closer. 3 days ago, she'd escaped this place. Now she was riding back toward it with an army at her back. That took a kind of courage most people would never understand. 5 miles out, Danny's voice crackled through the Bluetooth speaker in Cole's helmet. "Federal teams are in position on the eastern approach. Walsh confirms warrants are active. We're green across the board." "Copy that." Cole glanced in his mirror at the endless stream of motorcycles behind him. "All units, reduce speed. Formation positions in 2 minutes." The convoy began to slow, spreading out like a wave approaching shore. 50 bikes wide, 17 rows deep, a wall of chrome and leather that would block every escape route from the compound. The gates of Eden appeared on the horizon. Even from a mile away, Cole could see the scope of it. High fences topped with razor wire, guard towers at each corner, a cluster of buildings at the center, dormitories, administrative offices, the church where Prophet Crane delivered his sermons of manipulation and control. It looked like a prison, because that's exactly what it was. "Holy shit," someone breathed over the radio. "They've got guards on the walls." Cole saw them too. Men in tactical gear, rifles visible, taking up positions along the perimeter. At least 20 of them, more than Emily had estimated. Crane had been reinforcing since her escape. "Nobody panic," Cole said. "Stay in formation. Wait for the signal." The convoy rolled to a stop 200 yards from the main gate. 847 motorcycles arranged in a perfect semicircle, blocking the western approach completely. To the east, Cole could see the dust clouds rising from federal vehicles taking their positions. The compound was surrounded. For a long moment, Nothing moved. The desert wind blew dust across the open ground between the bikers and the fence. Guards on the walls tracked rifles back and forth, uncertain where to aim when there were so many targets. Then, the main gate opened. A figure emerged, tall, gaunt, dressed in flowing white robes that billowed in the morning breeze. White beard reaching to his chest, eyes that burned with the absolute certainty of a man who believed himself chosen by God. Prophet Ezekiel Crane walked toward the biker line with the unhurried pace of someone who had never known defeat. "My children," he called out, his voice carrying across the distance with practiced projection, "you have been misled, deceived by a troubled young woman who could not accept the love and discipline our community offered. There is no crime here, no victims, only a family, peacefully practicing our faith." Cole dismounted. Emily's hand grabbed his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't give him the chance to—" "I have to." Cole squeezed her hand. "But I'm not going alone." He walked forward, and Emily followed. They stopped 50 feet from Crane, close enough to see the spider veins in his cheeks, close enough to smell the cologne he used to mask the stench of his corruption. "Mr. Brennan, I presume." Crane's smile was benevolent, practiced, utterly false. "I've heard about you. A man of violence pretending to be a savior." "How predictable." "Ezekiel Crane," Cole's voice was flat, "you're under arrest. Federal warrants have been issued for human trafficking, wire fraud, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges. You can surrender peacefully, or you can make this difficult. Your choice." Crane laughed, actually laughed as if Cole had told a mildly amusing joke. "Arrest? On what grounds? The fevered accusations of a mentally unstable girl who wandered into the desert and nearly died from her own foolishness?" He shook his head. "I have friends, Mr. Brennan, powerful friends. This little spectacle of yours will amount to nothing. By tomorrow, you'll be in a cell, and I'll be continuing God's work." "Your friends are busy right now." Agent Walsh's voice cut through the tension. She walked forward from the federal vehicles, badge held high. "Sheriff Hannity was arrested an hour ago. Judge Morrison resigned this morning when we presented evidence of his involvement. And Congressman Williams is currently being questioned about payments he received from your organization over the past 6 years." Agent Walsh kept one folder for 5 years. She called it the ghost case. What was inside sent not only the cult leader to prison, but people no one expected. Crane's smile flickered. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. "You're bluffing." "I never bluff." Walsh stopped beside Cole. "We have financial records documenting every payment you've made to every official you've corrupted. We have testimony from 17 former members. We have communication logs, photographs, and video evidence that will ensure you spend the rest of your life in federal prison." She held up a folder, thick, worn, bursting with documents. "This is 5 years of work, Prophet Crane. 5 years of being blocked, sabotaged, shut down by your friends in high places. But their protection is gone now, and you're finally going to face justice for what you've done." Crane's face had gone pale beneath his carefully maintained tan. His eyes darted toward the compound, toward the guards on the walls, toward any possible escape. There was none. 847 motorcycles blocked the west. Federal vehicles blocked the east. Helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting every moment to millions of viewers worldwide. He was trapped. And then Emily stepped forward. She walked past Cole, past Walsh, until she stood directly in front of the man who had stolen 3 years of her life. The man who had tried to sell her to a 68-year-old stranger. The man who had told her she was worthless, that she was nothing, that no one would ever come for her. "Do you remember what you told me?" Emily's voice carried clearly in the morning air. "The night before my wedding? You said I should be grateful. You said I was lucky to be chosen. You said that no one outside these walls cared if I lived or died." Crane said nothing. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscles stood out like cables. Emily held up her wrist, showing the silver bracelet. "Number 47, that's what you called me. You took my name. You took my family. You took 3 years of my life." Her voice rose. "But you couldn't take everything. You couldn't take my will to survive, and you couldn't stop me from walking 60 miles through the desert to find help." She gestured at the army behind her. The moment when Emily looked into Crane's eyes, this is a scene that every news channel in the country would later broadcast. The words she said to him became a symbol. Here they are. You said nobody was coming. You said the world had forgotten us. Emily's smile was sharp as broken glass. Look behind me, Prophet. 847 people came. They dropped everything, their jobs, their families, their old grudges, and they drove across 12 states to prove you wrong. She leaned in close enough that only Crane could hear her next words. You're going to die in prison. Alone. Forgotten. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure every woman you hurt knows that she's not alone anymore. She stepped back. Arrest him. Federal agents moved forward. Handcuffs clicked around Crane's wrists, and the prophet of the Gates of Eden was led away in silence, his white robes dragging in the Arizona dust, his empire crumbling around him. The moment liberation. 37 women walk into freedom. If you have goosebumps right now, right? I have tears in my eyes. You're not alone. The compound gates stood open now. FBI tactical teams had secured the perimeter in minutes. Crane's guards, seeing the overwhelming force arrayed against them, had surrendered without firing a shot. Most of them were hired muscle, men who'd signed up for easy money, not martyrdom. When confronted with 800 bikers and 60 federal agents, they'd made the sensible choice. Cole walked through those gates with Emily at his side. The interior was both better and worse than he'd imagined. Better because the buildings were clean, well-maintained, almost pleasant from the outside. Worse because that pleasant appearance was a mask, a thin veneer of normalcy covering years of systematic abuse. They found the women in a dormitory on the eastern side of the compound. 36 faces looked up as the door opened. 36 pairs of eyes, wide with fear and confusion. They ranged in age from 18 to 25, and they all wore the same expression, the look of people who had been told the outside world was dangerous, that their families had forgotten them, that no one was coming to help. Emily stepped forward. It's okay, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It's over. We're here to take you home. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then a young woman in the front row, barely 18 with dark hair and hollow eyes, stood up slowly. Emily? She whispered. Is it really you? It's me, Hannah. I promised I'd come back. I promised I'd bring help. Hannah's face crumpled. Tears began streaming down her cheeks. They told us you were dead. They said you died in the desert. They said it was God's punishment for trying to leave. They lied. Emily crossed the room and wrapped her arms around the younger woman. They've been lying about everything. But it's over now, all of it. One by one, the other women began to stand, to move toward the door, to walk out into the sunlight for the first time as free people. Outside, the bikers had formed a corridor leading from the dormitory to a fleet of waiting buses. 847 men and women standing in silence, heads bowed as the survivors walked past. Some of the bikers were crying. Cole saw it, hardened men with decades of violence in their histories, tears streaming down weathered faces. Women who had ridden 500 miles to be here, weeping openly as the young victims emerged into the light. He understood. How could you witness something like this and not be moved? The last woman to emerge was older than the others, maybe 25, with prematurely gray streaks in her hair and a look of haunted exhaustion. She stopped when she saw the bikers, stared at them with an expression of utter disbelief. Who are you? She asked. Who are all these people? Cole stepped forward. We're just people, he said. People who heard your story and decided to do something about it. But why? Her voice cracked. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why would you come? Cole thought about Maggie, about the promise he'd made at her grave, about 6 years of waiting for a chance to make a difference. Because nobody should have to suffer alone, he said, and because someone should have come for you a long time ago. The woman, her name was Sarah, he would learn later, and she had been in the compound for 7 years, broke completely. The walls she'd built to survive, 7 years of walls, crumbled in an instant. She fell into Cole's arms, sobbing against his chest, and Cole held her the way he wished someone had held Maggie, held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, because in that moment, she was. Around them, the desert was silent except for the sound of crying, the sound of people who had been told they were worthless, finally learning they weren't, the sound of souls beginning the long journey home. Not everyone came out unscathed. Silas Morrow had been inside the compound when the raid began. While his guards surrendered, he'd tried a different approach, grabbing one of the younger women, a 19-year-old named Destiny, and dragging her toward a back exit. Cole found them in a maintenance corridor. Morrow had a knife pressed against Destiny's throat. His eyes were wild, the look of a cornered animal who knew his world was ending and didn't care who he took with him. "Stay back," Morrow shouted. "Stay back or I swear to God You'll what?" Cole's voice was calm, steady, despite the ice running through his veins. "Kill her in front of witnesses? In front of cameras? How do you think that ends for you?" "I don't care how it ends. None of this matters if I'm going to prison anyway." "Then let her go." Cole took a slow step forward. "Let her go. And maybe the judge takes that into consideration. Show some humanity for once in your miserable life." Morrow laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "Humanity? You want to talk to me about humanity?" The knife pressed tighter against Destiny's throat. A thin line of blood appeared. "I did what I had to do. We all did. Crane promised you nothing that mattered." Cole was closer now, close enough to see the sweat on Morrow's forehead. "He used you the same way he used these women. You were just a tool, a means to an end, and now that he's finished, you're disposable." Something flickered in Morrow's eyes. Doubt, fear. "He said we were doing God's work." "God doesn't sell women to old men." Cole's voice hardened. "You know that. You've always known that. You just didn't want to admit it because admitting it meant admitting what you'd become." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Destiny did something unexpected. She went limp. Her body sagged, throwing Morrow off balance. In the half-second it took him to adjust his grip, Cole moved. The knife clattered to the floor. Morrow went down hard, Cole's fist connecting with his jaw in a blow that carried 6 years of rage behind it. But that wasn't enough for Morrow. He scrambled for the knife, grabbed it, lunged. Pain exploded through Cole's shoulder. He looked down. The blade was buried in his flesh, just below his collarbone. Blood was already soaking through his shirt. But his hands were locked around Morrow's throat. "That's enough." Agent Walsh's voice cut through the haze. Federal agents flooded the corridor, pulling Morrow away, applying pressure to Cole's wound. "She's safe," someone said. "The girl's safe." Cole looked over. Destiny was being helped toward the exit, shaking but unharmed. She glanced back at him and something passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, a bond forged in a moment of shared terror. Then, the world started to gray at the edges. "Medic!" Walsh was shouting. "We need a medic now!" Cole's last coherent thought, before the darkness took him, was simple. Worth it. He woke up in a helicopter. The thrum of rotors filled his ears. His shoulder screamed with every heartbeat. Emily's face hovered above him, her expression a mixture of fear and fury. "You stupid, reckless, idiotic," she was crying. "You could have died. You could have—" "Did we get them?" His voice was a croak. "The women. Did we get them all?" "All 37. Emily's tears were falling onto his face now. "Everyone's safe. Crane's in custody. Morrow's in custody. It's over." Cole closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that." Emily gripped his hand with the same desperate strength she'd used at the gas station 4 days ago. "You don't get to die being noble. You don't get to leave me after everything we've—" "Not dying." Cole forced his eyes open. "Just resting. Wake me up when we land." The helicopter carried them toward Phoenix, toward hospitals and debriefings, and a media firestorm that would consume the next several months. But for now, in the air above the desert, Cole allowed himself to rest. The promise had been kept. The women were free. And somehow, against all odds, they had won. The aftermath unfolded like an avalanche. In the first 24 hours, 37 arrests were made. Crane and Morrow were just the beginning. Federal agents swept up guards, administrators, financial officers, and the so-called elders who had purchased women like merchandise. But the real shock came when they opened the compound's hidden files. Agent Walsh called Cole in his hospital room, 3 hours after surgery had removed the knife from his shoulder. "You need to see this," she said. "You need to understand what we found." She showed up an hour later with a tablet full of documents. Financial records documenting marriage fees, tens of thousands of dollars paid by wealthy men for young brides, communication logs showing years of coordination with corrupt officials, a database containing the names and personal information of every woman who had passed through the compound since 2003. 412 names. Not all of them had survived. Some had voluntarily left after years of abuse. Some had passed on under circumstances that would now be investigated as potential homicides. Some had simply disappeared, their files marked transferred, with no indication of where they'd gone. "Jesus," Cole breathed. "It gets worse." Walsh swiped to another screen. "This is Crane's insurance file. Every powerful person he ever corrupted, documented with photographs and payment records." The names on the screen made Cole's blood run cold. A state senator, 2 federal judges, a deputy director at the FBI, a sitting congressman. "How many people knew about this?" Cole asked. "Too many. For too long." Walsh's voice was grim. "But not anymore. Every name in this file is being investigated. Some have already resigned. Others are being arrested as we speak." She paused. "There's one more thing. Something that isn't in any official report yet." Cole waited. Sarah Chen, the woman who originally testified against Crane 5 years ago, the one whose testimony got buried. "What about her?" Walsh's expression softened for the first time. "She's been watching the news coverage, all of it. When she saw Emily standing up to Crane at the compound gates," Walsh shook her head. "She called me this morning, said she wants to testify again, publicly this time, on the record." "Why?" "Because she saw 800 people show up for strangers. She saw bikers and federal agents working together. She saw something she'd stopped believing in." Walsh met Cole's eyes. Hope. She saw hope. The verdict for Crane. This isn't the end of the story yet. What happened 5 years later proves sometimes one night at a gas station can change the laws of an entire country. The trial began 4 months later. Cole sat in the gallery every day, his shoulders still aching despite months of physical therapy. Emily sat beside him, her silver bracelet visible, her chin held high. Around them, survivors filled the courtroom, 37 women who had walked out of the gates of Eden, plus dozens more who had escaped years earlier and were finally ready to speak. The prosecution's case was devastating. Financial records, communication logs, testimony from insider witnesses who had cut deals to avoid prosecution. And above all, the voices of the survivors themselves, women who took the stand one after another and told the world what had been done to them behind those pristine walls. Emily testified for 3 days. She described the recruitment, the isolation, the systematic destruction of identity, the marriages that were sales, the spiritual guidance that was brainwashing, the family that was a prison. She showed her bracelet to the jury. "This number was supposed to erase me," she said, "but instead, it became proof of what I survived, what we all survived." She looked at Crane, sitting at the defendant's table with his beard now unkempt, his white robes replaced by an orange jumpsuit. "You told us we were nothing, that no one was looking, that the world had forgotten we existed." Her voice rose. 847 people proved you wrong, and now the whole world knows exactly what you are." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Ezekiel Crane was sentenced to 412 years in federal prison, 1 year for every woman who had passed through his compound. A symbolic sentence, perhaps, but symbols mattered. When the verdict was read, Cole looked across the courtroom at Emily. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. It was over. They had won. But the story wasn't finished yet. The federal courthouse in Phoenix emptied slowly after the verdict. Journalists scrambled for statements, cameras flashed, legal experts provided breathless commentary for the evening news. But Cole Brennan slipped out through a side entrance, avoiding the chaos, needing a moment to process what had just happened. 412 years, 1 year for every woman. Crane would die in a cell, alone, forgotten, exactly as Emily had promised. But the sentence, as satisfying as it was, felt less like victory than like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Crane was finished. His network was shattered. 37 women were free. Now what? Cole found Emily sitting on a bench outside the courthouse, staring at the sunset painting the Arizona sky in shades of orange and purple. Her silver bracelet caught the dying light, the number 47 glinting like a tiny star. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know." Her voice was distant, thoughtful. "I've been waiting for this moment for so long, imagining what it would feel like. And now that it's here, it feels empty?" "No, not empty, just different than I expected." She turned to face him. "For 3 years, my whole identity was about surviving that place. Then for 4 months, it was about escaping and fighting back. Now Crane's going to prison forever, and I don't know who I am anymore." Cole understood. He'd felt the same thing after Maggie died, the strange emptiness that came when the thing you'd been fighting against was suddenly gone. "You're Emily Carter," he said. "You're a survivor. You're the woman who walked 60 miles through the desert and then came back with an army. Beyond that?" He shrugged. "You get to decide. That's what freedom means." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I want to help others," she said finally. "Women like me. Women who are still trapped in places like the gates of Eden. Women who don't know yet that there's a way out." "How?" "I don't know yet. Law school maybe, advocacy work, something that turns what happened to me into something useful." She looked at him. "What about you?" Cole considered the question. The club would go back to normal now. Rides and meetings and the everyday business of brotherhood. His shoulder would heal. Life would continue. But something had changed during those 4 days. Something fundamental. He'd seen what was possible when people put aside their differences and fought for a common cause. He'd watched enemies become allies. He'd witnessed the kind of hope that most people spent their whole lives searching for. Going back to normal felt like a betrayal of that. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what we built during the operation. All those clubs working together. All those people who showed up because someone needed help. 847 people. 847 people who proved that it's possible, that the old rivalries don't have to define us forever." He paused. "What if we made it permanent? Not just a one-time thing, but an actual organization, a coalition that responds when people need help, women escaping cults, kids in danger, anyone who's been failed by the system." Emily's eyes widened. "You're talking about institutionalizing what happened. I'm talking about making sure it happens again and again. As many times as it needs to." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sun continued its descent, shadows lengthening across the courthouse plaza. Then Emily smiled. "I think," she said, "that's the best idea you've ever had." The 47 Coalition was formally established 6 weeks later. The ceremony took place in a massive field outside Phoenix, rented for the occasion, and transformed into a gathering space for the thousands who wanted to attend. Bikers from every corner of America, survivors of the gates of Eden, families reunited after years of separation, journalists from around the world. Cole stood at the center of a makeshift stage, reading from a document that had been crafted by survivors, bikers, and legal experts working together. "We, the members of the 47 Coalition, hereby dedicate ourselves to the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. We pledge to use our resources, our skills, and our brotherhood to combat human trafficking, cult abuse, and all forms of exploitation. We reject violence except in defense of the innocent. We embrace justice, compassion, and the fundamental dignity of every human being." He looked up at the crowd. A sea of faces representing every walk of life, every background, every history. This is not what people expect from motorcycle clubs. I know that. The world has told stories about us for decades, stories about crime and violence and danger. Some of those stories are true. We haven't always been the good guys. He paused. But this is who we choose to be now. This is the legacy we want to leave. And this is the promise we make to every victim still waiting for rescue. We will not forget you. We will not abandon you. And we will never, ever stop fighting for you. The crowd erupted in cheers. thousands of voices raised in support of a mission that would have seemed impossible just months before. Emily stepped up beside Cole, taking the microphone. "I was number 47, she said. A number instead of a name, a piece of property instead of a person, and I thought that was all I would ever be." She held up her wrist, showing her bracelet to the cameras. "But then I met a man who saw something different, who saw a survivor instead of a victim, who saw strength instead of weakness, and he introduced me to a family I never knew existed, a family of people who refuse to look away when others are suffering." Her voice strengthened. "I'm not number 47 anymore. I'm Emily Carter, survivor, advocate, founding member of an organization that will ensure no one ever feels as alone as I did." She turned to Cole. "Thank you for believing me when you had no reason to, for fighting for me when you didn't have to, for proving that there are still good people in this world." Cole couldn't trust himself to speak. Instead, he simply pulled Emily into a hug, holding her as the crowd roared its approval. When they finally separated, Danny approached with a small wooden box. "Brother," he said, "the coalition voted, unanimously. We want you to have this." Inside the box, resting on black velvet, was a silver pendant, the number 47, enclosed in a circle of wings. "The official symbol of the coalition," Danny explained. "Every member will wear one, but this is the first. It belongs to you." Cole lifted the pendant. It was heavier than he expected. Heavy with meaning, with responsibility, with the weight of everything they'd promised to do. He put it around his neck. "I accept this not as an honor, but as a commitment, a reminder of why we're here and what we're fighting for." He turned to face the crowd one final time. "The 47 Coalition is officially operational, and starting today, we have work to do." The first year was a whirlwind. They established chapters in 32 states, recruiting members from clubs that had been enemies for generations. They created a 24-hour hotline staffed by trained volunteers. They built relationships with law enforcement, social services, and survivor advocacy groups across the country. And they took action. In February, coalition members helped FBI agents raid a compound in Montana. 41 women were liberated. The leader was sentenced to life. In April, a coalition tip led to the arrests of a human trafficking ring in Las Vegas. 16 victims recovered, 23 perpetrators charged. In June, volunteers provided security for a survivor testifying before Congress. Her testimony led to 3 new bills protecting vulnerable individuals from cult exploitation. The numbers told the story. By the end of 2020, the 47 Coalition had contributed to the rescue of over 150 trafficking victims, assisted in the prosecution of more than 70 perpetrators, and provided support services to over 300 survivors. But numbers couldn't capture everything. They couldn't capture the tears of a mother reunited with a daughter she'd thought was lost forever, the tentative smile of a young woman taking her first steps toward a new life, the transformation of hardened bikers into compassionate advocates, their rough exteriors giving way to something gentler when confronted with those who needed help. Cole saw these moments every day. Each one reminded him why he'd started this journey. Each one reminded him of Maggie. On the first anniversary of the Coalition's founding, Emily graduated from law school. She'd completed a 3-year program in 18 months through a combination of prior credits, summer sessions, and sheer determination. Her thesis on legal frameworks for protecting cult survivors was published in a national journal and cited in 2 subsequent court cases. Cole sat in the audience as she walked across the stage, her silver bracelet visible beneath her graduation robe. When she caught his eye, she smiled, the bright, unguarded smile of someone who had found their purpose. Afterward, at the celebration, she approached him with a gift. "I made something for you," she said, handing him a small velvet box. Inside was a bracelet, identical to the one she wore, with the number 47 engraved on its surface. "You gave us back our names," Emily said. "Now we're giving you a number, not to take away your identity, to remind you that you're part of something bigger, part of a family that will never forget what you did." Cole looked at the bracelet, at the number that had once represented erasure, now transformed into a symbol of liberation. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. "I don't have words for what this means." You don't need words. You showed us through actions. Emily clasped the bracelet around his wrist. That's worth more than any speech. The story didn't end with the trial. What happened over the next 5 years proves that sometimes one night at a gas station can change the laws of an entire country. 5 years passed. The 47 coalition grew beyond anything Cole had imagined. Chapters in every state, international affiliates in Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and 12 other countries. A survivor services network that had helped over 2,000 people rebuild their lives. Emily had become one of the most prominent victims' rights attorneys in the country. She'd argued cases before federal courts, testified before Congress 3 times, and been profiled in magazines and documentaries around the world. And together, they'd achieved something that had once seemed impossible. Emily's Law, the legislation they'd spent 3 years fighting for, was passed by the Arizona State Legislature in 2022. It required mandatory reporting of suspected cult abuse, established state task forces for investigating isolated religious communities, and created funding for survivor services. By 2024, 11 states had passed similar legislation. A federal version was working its way through Congress, with bipartisan support that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. The system that had failed Maggie, that had failed Emily, that had failed 412 women at the gates of Eden, that system was finally beginning to change. On the 5th anniversary of the liberation, Cole rode his Harley through the Arizona desert. The road was familiar now. He'd traveled it many times over the years, making a pilgrimage that had become as essential as breathing. The landscape rolled past, endless sagebrush, distant mountains, the vast blue sky that seemed to stretch into infinity. The gas station appeared on the horizon. It looked the same as it had that first night, same flickering fluorescent lights, same ancient pumps, same cracked concrete and faded paint. The only difference was the bronze plaque mounted beside the road, installed 3 years ago during a ceremony attended by hundreds. Cole parked his bike and walked to the plaque. His fingers traced the engraved words. On this spot, June 15, 2019, a survivor's courage ignited a movement that changed the nation. Reading about yourself? He turned. Emily stood behind him, dressed in professional clothes that bore no resemblance to the torn white dress she'd worn that first night. Her silver bracelet still circled her wrist. She had never taken it off, never would. But it was complemented now by a law school ring and a bar association pin. 5 years had transformed her. The hollow-eyed survivor who had grabbed a stranger's arm was now a woman of power and purpose, respected by judges, feared by predators, loved by the countless people she'd helped. But her eyes were the same, still fierce, still determined, still carrying the fire that had carried her 60 miles through the desert. "I didn't expect you for another hour," Cole said. "Couldn't wait." Emily walked over to stand beside him. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years. Feels longer. And shorter. Both at the same time." They stood in silence, watching the sun rise higher. "The governor signed it yesterday," Emily said finally. "The federal version of Emily's Law. It passed the Senate last week. The president's holding a signing ceremony next month." Cole felt something swell in his chest. Pride, gratitude, and something else, something that felt like peace. "You did it. Everything you promised." "We did it." Emily's voice was firm. "All of us. The coalition, the survivors, the bikers who showed up when no one else would." She turned to face him. "And you, Cole. None of this happens without you." "I just answered a phone call." "You did a lot more than that." Emily reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you. A letter from someone you should hear from." Cole opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten page. "Mr. Brennan, you don't know me, but I know you. My name is Maria. 3 years ago I was trapped in a group similar to the Gates of Eden. Different state, different prophet, same hell. I got out, but I didn't know what to do with myself. I felt broken, lost, like I'd never be whole again. Then I saw the news coverage of what you did. The 800 bikers. The liberation. Emily Carter standing up to Crane and telling him the world hadn't forgotten. That day, I decided to live. Not just survive, live. I went back to school, got my degree. Started volunteering at a shelter for women escaping domestic violence. Last month, I helped my first survivor get out of the same kind of place that almost destroyed me. You saved my life, Mr. Brennan. You saved it without ever meeting me, without ever knowing I existed. Because you showed me that good people still exist. That hope is still possible. That someone, somewhere, will always be willing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Maria P.S. I wear a bracelet now too, number 47, just like Emily's. Just like yours. Because that number doesn't mean what it used to mean. It means we survived. It means we're not alone. It means we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Cole read the letter twice, then a third time. By the fourth reading, his vision had blurred with tears he refused to let fall. There are hundreds of letters like that, Emily said quietly. Thousands. People who saw what we did and decided to keep fighting. People who were saved by strangers they never met because those strangers were inspired by our story. She took his hand. That's your legacy, Cole. Not the arrests or the trials or the laws, the lives, the hope, the proof that one person on one night can change everything. Cole looked at the letter in his hand, at the bracelet on his wrist, at the woman standing beside him. 5 years ago, he'd been a broken man running from grief, searching for meaning on empty desert roads. Now he was part of something he never could have imagined, a movement, a family, a force for good that stretched across continents. And it had all started here, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, with a barefoot girl emerging from the darkness, grabbing his arm, asking for help. The sound of motorcycles broke the morning silence. Cole looked up. Coming down the highway, a convoy was approaching, dozens of bikes, then hundreds, materializing on the horizon like a mirage made real. The annual memorial ride. Bikers from across the country gathering to commemorate the liberation and recommit themselves to the coalition's mission. Here they come, Emily said. Here they come. The first bikes pulled into the station's lot, their riders dismounting to embrace old friends and welcome new members. Danny was there, older now, grayer, but still solid as rock. Ghost Fernandez, whose handshake 5 years ago had signaled the end of an era and the beginning of something new. Agent Walsh, long since retired from the FBI, but still attending every memorial without fail. And others, hundreds of others, veterans of the original ride, newcomers who had joined since, survivors who had become advocates, advocates who had become leaders. A family built on the ashes of old grudges, united by a purpose that transcended everything that had come before. Speech time, Danny called out. Can't have an anniversary without a speech from the founder. Cole shook his head. I'm not much for speeches. Tough. Get up there. Someone had set up a small platform near the memorial plaque. Cole climbed onto it, looking out at the sea of faces before him, bikers and survivors, law enforcement and civilians, people from every background and every walk of life. 5 years ago, he began, a woman walked out of the darkness at this gas station and asked for help. She'd been told nobody was coming, that nobody cared, that the world had forgotten she existed. He paused. She was wrong. 847 people proved her wrong, and since that day, thousands more have joined the fight, not because they had to, not because anyone forced them, but because they saw something worth fighting for. His voice strengthened. We've accomplished a lot in 5 years. Laws have changed. Predators have been imprisoned. Over 2,000 survivors have gotten the help they needed to rebuild their lives. But we're not done. We'll never be done. As long as there are people trapped in places like the gates of Eden, we'll keep fighting. As long as there are victims waiting for someone to come for them, we'll keep showing up. He held up his wrist, showing the bracelet. Number 47. It used to mean erasure, dehumanization, the theft of identity and dignity. But we took that meaning back. Now it means survival, resistance, hope. It means that no matter how dark things get, you're never truly alone. Cole looked at Emily, standing at the edge of the crowd. To everyone who's still trapped, know that we're coming for you. To everyone who's escaped, welcome home. And to everyone who's fought beside us, who's sacrificed and bled and refused to give up, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. He stepped down from the platform. The crowd parted as he walked toward Emily. She met him halfway, her eyes shimmering. "Good speech," she said. "I had a good teacher." They stood together, watching as the memorial ceremony continued around them. Speeches from survivors, testimonials from family members, a moment of silence for those who hadn't made it out. Then, as one, the assembled bikers started their engines. The sound was like thunder, like a promise, like the heartbeat of an army that would never stop fighting. Cole led the convoy away from the gas station, riding into the desert that had witnessed so much suffering and so much redemption. Emily's arms were around his waist, her bracelet glinting in the sunlight. The road stretched before them, endless and open, full of possibility. You watched until the end. You are part of this story. Write the code phrase for those who made it to the finale, number 47, forever. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles happen. As they rode, Cole allowed himself a moment of peace. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over, not as long as there were predators and victims, systems that failed, and people who needed help. But that was okay, because somewhere out there, another survivor was taking her first step toward freedom. Another stranger was deciding to answer the call. Another impossible alliance was forming in the face of injustice. The cycle continued. The work went on. And the 47 Coalition rode on into whatever darkness awaited, carrying light. Cole pulled the photograph of Maggie from his vest pocket, worn almost to nothing now, the image nearly invisible. He didn't need it anymore. Her memory wasn't a weight to carry. It was a light to follow. He let the photograph go, watching it spiral away into the desert wind. And he kept riding, toward the horizon, toward the future, toward the next person who needed help. Number 47, forever. The desert swallowed the convoy, leaving behind only dust and echoes and the distant rumble of engines carrying hope to those who still waited to be found. Somewhere out there, another gas station stood empty in the darkness. Somewhere out there, another survivor was about to emerge. And somewhere out there, a stranger was getting ready to say the words that changed everything. "You're safe now. We've got you." The story never ends. It just begins again.